Okay, grade 8, here we are, lesson 116, division by zero. The concept is fairly simple. If you go divided by zero, you cannot do that. It doesn't work. So this would show up, if you tried it on your calculator, um, as an error. So I've tried it. 0 divided by 0 is an error. 10 divided by 0 is an error. So it won't work. So division by zero is undefined. That's the way the math term they've used it. It just doesn't work. So, and that makes sense too. If you're going to have a pie and you're going to divide it by zero, it's still the pie. You can't make that work. If you have no pies and you can't divide up no pies. So that would make an awful lot of sense. So what they've done for you is an example 1 in your textbook, and you can look at that on page 759. Example 1, page 759, is they've actually shown a set of quotients here. So they have 10 over 1, 10 over 0.1, and 10 over 0.01, and every one gets a different answer. 10 divided by 1 is 10. The closer you get to 0, the higher it goes up, right? And so you'll see that makes sense when it comes to a graph, that the closer you get to 0, you'll see that it just keeps climbing closer to that line there, your y-axis. So it will never touch it, but it'll get higher and higher and higher. So you can imagine if you go 10 divided by 0.001, you're going to get 1,000, and so on. The closer you get, the higher that number goes. What I've done is just looked online for a quick little calculator to show that. And if I can find that, you'll see it here. If I go 10 divided by x, which means it'll show me all the possibilities except for 0. Oops. Let me go back here, and we go 10 divided by x. You can see our graph here shows that it will get closer to 0, but it'll never touch 0. It's very close. So the further down that line you go, you can see that it's very close to 0, but it's never going to touch 0. It just gets larger and larger and larger. And that's essentially the whole premise behind 10 divided by x. So in your solutions that you work with, and that's where the practice set comes in, they talk really about factoring. So if you look at factors, 4 times 5 equals 20. This is a factor, this is a factor, and there's your answer, right? Your product. Right? So product, you can use those numbers in any set of pairs. So you can use it as a quotient, right? 20 divided by 5 is 4. 20 divided by 4 equals 5. You've learned that. That always works, right? When you throw 0 in the mix, it's not going to help. So sometimes you have to make sure that you specify in an equation what number cannot be a variable. Okay, so let's go through the practice set. Practice set A says, use a calculator to divide several different numbers of your choosing by 0. Remember to clear the calculator between calculations. What answers are displayed, and I showed you that you get an error. So B says, if we attempt to form two division facts for the multiplication fact 5 times 0 equals 0, one of the arrangements is not a fact. Which arrangement is not a fact? So if you look at this, you have 5 times 0 equals 0. That works. If you have 0 times 5 equals 0, that works. If you have 0 divided by 0, that cannot work. That's going to be an error, right? 5 divided by 0 does work. It's still 0. Okay, so let's go to C. under the circumstances, which expression does the following expression not equal 1? Okay, so here we have x over 1 over x over 1. All right, so normally if we would substitute x, say, with 2, then you have 2 minus 1 over 2 minus 1. It's going to equal 1. And 3, for example, 3 minus 1, it's going to equal 1. The only chance it's going to be not work is if you substitute in 1, because you have 1 minus 1. 1 minus 1. And you'd have 0 over 0, which is an error. So that will not work. Okay, that does C. Let's go to D. For the following expressions, find the number or numbers that may not be used in place of the variable. So we've learned this already, 5 over x. So here we can say that x cannot equal 0. And with E, let's write that down. We can write 2 is x over x minus 3. So we have to look over here and make sure that we do not get the bottom to be 0. So we have to have 3 minus 3, so x cannot equal 3. F, try on your own and see if you have this figured out. You can do it quickly with mental math, right? So F, you have 6 over 2w, and w, of course, cannot equal 0, because that would put a 0 on the bottom. G, same thing. You're going to not get confused by the top. Just look at the bottom. So again, here, we don't want y to equal 4, because that would make 8 subtract 8. H, remember when you have a squared, it can mean two different numbers. So 16 over x squared minus 4. We don't want to make it so that it's a 4, so x has to be, cannot be plus or negative 2. And the last one, I, 3ab over c. Again, very simple. C cannot equal 0. So that is your math lesson for today, grade 8. If you have any questions, I am